What is good, Mexit Planners, and welcome to a new season of content. Season 2 will feature 12 long-form videos and mini shorts over the next 11 weeks. Last week, I had a wonderful vacation in Mexico City. I needed that time to recharge my creative battery. Mexico City made a great first impression, and I left with a very special traditional Mexican gift. Today, I'm sharing my experience of visiting Mexico City for the first time outside of the airport. If you're planning to move to Mexico and trying to figure out whether Mexico City is a good fit for you, watch this video. Stay to the end and I'll tell you about the special gift I got while visiting Mexico City. Shout out to Global Adventurer, who I met in Mexico during this trip. You provided excellent guidance and recommendations and helped make this trip a big success. Thank you. Last week began Semana Santa here in Mexico and most of Latin America. This holiday season lasts 2 weeks and most schools are closed as families celebrate the resurrection of Christ by attending Mass and going to many of the beaches all over Mexico. This was the perfect time to head to Mexico City, which is the most populous city in North America. Now, I've heard that Mexico City is enormous, and I've seen firsthand how big the city is from flying over it dozens of times in the last few years. But until you step out of the airport and put your feet on the ground, you have no idea of the scale of this massive city. Mexico City has 21 million people in a valley surrounded by mountains. Merida has a little over 1 million people. Mexico City has about the same population as the entire state of Florida. Let me say that again. Mexico City has the same population as the entire state of Florida. You have 21 million people packed into a valley about the size 100 times smaller than the state of Florida. I expected Mexico City to be elbow to elbow walking down the streets. Our transportation from the airport took over 90 minutes to get us to our apartment in Roma. So the traffic didn't disappoint with my original expectations of how crowded the city would be. But once we were in our apartment in Roma on Avenida Chapultepec, I was pleasantly surprised with how few people were on the streets. The Roma area was open and accessible, and walking the tree-lined streets was super easy. Roma was the perfect area to stay and begin our explorations. I first noticed the beautiful tree-lined streets and the fantastic spring-like weather. Mexico City is easily 20 degrees cooler than Merida at any point during the day. It was like going from full blast summer to early spring. The second thing I noticed was the beautiful purple Japanese Jacaranda trees everywhere. These trees added a pop of color to the urban landscape everywhere and are spectacular. They reminded me of the Japanese cherry blossoms in DC. The streets also looked incredibly clean, well paved with ample sidewalks. I was very impressed overall with the transportation systems in Mexico City, from dedicated bus lanes, light rail, subway systems, and Ubers. We Ubered everywhere we didn't walk in the city and had no problems getting a car. Mexico City even has Uber XL, which were actually large SUV cars. The most we paid for an Uber was 500 pesos for a ride to Xochimilco, which is pretty far from the area of Roma. Our apartment was on the corner of Avenida Chapultepec and Obregon, blocks away from many of the best restaurants in Roma and Condesa. Dining out is one of my favorite forms of entertainment. I love a good meal, a good cocktail, and great company. Mexico City did not disappoint. We ate at some fantastic breakfast spots, the best being Bricks and Cafe Madre in Roma. We also had dinner at Limos Negros in Centro Mexico City and El Balcón de Zócalo, which had a fantastic view of the main square. During our stay, we visited Bosque de Chapultepec, a massive city park 2 times the size of Central Park in New York City. This park has over 1,700 acres and features many museums, zip lining, the zoo, and a host of other activities. We opted to go to the zoo, which was very impressive and free. The zoo was massive and had every species of antelope on the planet and all of the usual animals. They even had a grizzly bear and hyenas, which I've not seen elsewhere. The zoo is a close second to Guadalajara Zoo, which is one of the best in the world. It took us 3 hours to walk this zoo, and after that experience, it was time for a siesta. Wednesday, we got a chance to connect with my first friend in Merida, Miguel, my Spanish teacher from La Calle. Miguel is from the area of Coyoacán and does tours of Mexico City. In my last classes with him in 2022, we talked about going to Mexico City together to do a tour. As luck would have it, he was in Mexico City working on his house and had time on Wednesday to give us a tour. This was a real treat. We toured Coyoacán and started at the Inahuacalli Museum, which is the museum built by Diego Rivera to house his extraordinary collections of Teotihuacan artifacts. It was an impressive collection of artifacts and an impressive museum that I would highly recommend. The next stop was Diego Rivera's house, where he and Frida Kahlo lived together. On this day, we could see all 3 buildings of the compound, which was the first time Miguel had been to all the buildings because Frida's home and Diego Rivera's father's home are usually closed. Finally, we visited Coyoacán Central, which was our favorite part of the tour. We had lunch at a restaurant called La Coyoacán, where we tried some traditional Mexico City dishes like sopas, tlacoyos, and cactus. Now, I've had cactus before here in Merida, but I didn't like it because it was kind of slimy like okra. This time, it was seasoned exceptionally well and was delicious. It goes to show that it's all in the preparation. Coyoacán reminded me a lot of Tlaquepaque and Guadalajara, which is one of my favorite places. It made an immediate and positive impression, and this is an area that when I visit Mexico City the next time, I'll be staying in Coyoacán. On the last day of our trip, we visited the canals of Xochimilco. Wow. This is a must-do experience and was the trip's highlight for my 6-year-old daughter. She liked this excursion better than the zoo. There are 4 ports in which the boats depart. Be sure to visit the main port. Our Uber dropped us off at one of the smaller ports, and the feeling was off in that area. They tried to tell us this was the only port and that the main port was closed. I recommend eating a little bit before you get on the boats if you're hungry, or bringing your own food for the boats and do a picnic. We initially planned to eat from the vendors that come to the boats, but only saw people selling corn passing by. We did get drinks from a vendor that passed by and had great music from some of the mariachis. After Xochimilco, we returned to Coyoacán later that evening to enjoy the street festival we saw setting up the night before. Now, this is where things got really interesting. I had planned to eat authentic Mexican street food on Wednesday, but for whatever reason, I was just too tired to go back out and get some street food after our tour of Coyoacán earlier that day. So on Thursday, we ordered some steak tacos and elote from several of the vendors. Well, let me tell you, those steak tacos were okay going in, but murder coming out. My wife and I shared tacos and ended up with the rotavirus. We were down all Easter weekend. Somehow my wife managed to host an Easter egg hunt in Merida on Saturday for 50 kids. It was tough, but we powered through it. And all the kids had a great time. I was very impressed with Mexico City, and we picked the perfect time to visit as the streets were way less crowded than I anticipated. I highly recommend that you visit Coyoacán, Xochimilco, and Chapultepec Park. I wouldn't recommend the street food unless your stomach is already built for it. For a head-to-head comparison of Mexico City to Merida, check out the next video in this series. Until next time, MexitPlans Monty, I'm out.